Hi guys, welcome to the 2021 Fantasy League podcast with my friend Jerry Rains over here. This is CT. We don't have Bryson this week, but hopefully Bryson will be able to join going forward. We are picking up from last year, kind of where we left off, where if you don't remember, we'll go through last week's matchups and give some commentary on surprising results, what happened, blowout of the week, some of that kind of stuff. But then we'll spend most of the time looking at the matchups for next week and figuring out who we think is going to win. And we'll probably end up being wrong most of the time. But so if you want to make some money, just do the opposite of what we think. Jerry, anything you want to say?
I'm just excited to look at the matchups, and thanks for having me on today. Hopefully I can get a win this week after what happened last week, but we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah, well, why don't we go ahead and we'll pull it up. I'm going to kind of drive here. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Zoom in a little bit so it's a little bigger. So we can just go from top down, and we can, for last week's matchups, here's week one. We can give a little bit of detail on each one. The first matchup was Jack and I, and it was pretty close matchup for a little bit until
at kickoff it was a close matchup
until it started.
Yeah.
You know, Mahomes and Hill didn't start. They didn't go off until 3:25, so it was close before that.
I can't believe Mahomes just literally chunked it up and said Hill's down there somewhere, and he got it and scored.
Yeah, I jumped up out of my seat whenever that play happened because that kind of turned all the momentum in the game. So I was certainly not expecting this kind of output from my team. I feel like, it's a real running back heavy league, and there are very few bell cow running backs this year. And so, I know Mahomes is consistently excellent, but I had all of my receivers go off the same week. So, I think this is going to be the exception for me, not the norm.
Well, pull it up. Let's see what you got.
On the other hand, I think Jack's team, we'll get into it in a little bit, but he's already off to a slow start with his running backs. I know Swift had a good game last week, but Barkley has put up a couple of single-digit point totals, and Gibson hasn't been able to recapture his late season form from last year yet, and they've already lost their quarterback in Washington.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were down on Gibson. I think he's still learning the position. He was a wide receiver out in college, and I know he had a great year last year, but the big knock was he did it all against Dallas last year, and Dallas had the most atrocious run defense. So I knew going into the season, a lot of people were down on him. I'm not a fantasy expert, but I kind of can see why he's off to a rough start. Maybe he'll pick it up when he plays Dallas again or further down the line. He'll probably have some tough matchups against Philly because Philly looked like they put a lot of pressure in the trenches. So, and Washington has to play them twice. So I don't know about Gibson. I've never really looked into Swift. I think they play Green Bay. He could have another decent game, but I'm not very high on Swift either.
Yeah. Well, I think he had 8, 9, or 10 targets last week. So, they're going to be playing catch up a lot. I think he'll get a lot of receiving work in that backfield. But I did see a lot, to your point about Gibson. I saw a lot about him being, the overall top running back or top 5 running back preseason. And I was like, why? I don't think Washington's going to be that good. And so far, I think, I've been generally right on that one, but we'll see. And Swift, I think he'll continue to do some receiving work, but again, Detroit's so bad this year. I don't know that he'll get consistent.
I think Jack found one of the biggest sleepers in Herbert. From everything I hear, he's an absolute great quality locker room dude. He's only been there 2 years, and he's like absolutely controlling the locker room and friends with everyone. And I think he has great talent. He's like 6'6", tall quarterback with a great arm. And Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. I think he could maybe be a top 5 by the end of it. And to draft him so late was a good steal. But I just don't like the rest of his team he put together, honestly. But
Yep.
Jack's a good manager, and he'll probably figure it out. But yeah, this was a absolute ass kicking this first week.
Well, it helps when, again, I get, what is this, 60, 70, 80 points combined from my wide receivers. So,
and 2 of those were the Thursday night games, so you had to be feeling pretty good going into the weekend. That's a good Friday beers going into the weekend with a 29 and a 22 receiver right off the bat. So
yes, it was nice.
I'm surprised. Why were you high on Kansas City's defense?
My other option was to play Cleveland against Kansas City.
Yeah,
and I wasn't going to play anyone against Kansas City's offense. So.
I just meant like season long.
Oh, I mean, our defense is going to be middle of the road, and maybe we'll get some turnovers. Chris Jones shifted out to defensive end, and so I'm hoping he can finish with somewhere between 15 and 20 sacks. I think he had 2 in the past game. Tyrann Mathieu is a turnover machine, and we've got a couple of good young linebackers and Willie Gay and Nick Bolton. So I thought Bolton really played well, especially in the first half against Cleveland. The rest of the defense sucked the first half. Couldn't stop the run, but anyway, yeah, I mean, there, unless you drafted like Pittsburgh's defense or the Tampa Bay defense, I feel like it's kind of a crapshoot every year. So I just picked them up because I think they're going to be serviceable in the right matchups.
I kind of think you're right that every week with how good the NFL players are, it's an absolute crapshoot. I mean, the only way you really get a huge advantage is if you get a ton of sacks or you get a lucky defensive touchdown that can maybe swing a matchup in your favor. But other than that, it's kind of tough.
Right.
We can go on to the next one. We've spent enough time on this bloodbath.
Yeah. So next was RO and Mays, and this is about what I expected from both of these teams. I'm still real high on Mays' team this year. I'm also high on RO's team. I think he's probably got one of the most evenly balanced teams. But man, Mays, he was down 24 points going into Monday night, and Waller almost brought him back and won the game for him.
Yeah.
It's going to sting. McCaffrey finished, 2 yards short of 100. That would have
and 11 on the receiving. Wow. Yeah.
So that would have swung the game had he gotten, 2 more yards. But
RO Texan just like, please, Lamar, end this. He wanted that game to end so bad. I bet his heart was racing when it went into overtime. Like, that's the last thing he needed.
Well, then they got down to the goal line and then threw an interception, I think, or maybe that was Baltimore. But that game was wild.
It was awesome.
So,
what do you think rest of season after 1 week? I know this is overreaction, but Waller or Kelsey could be 1-2, you think, at the end? Or could Waller pass Kelsey?
Oh, absolutely. I think, yeah, I do. And partly is because I think Kansas City has slightly more weapons than Las Vegas has.
Mm-hmm.
They've got Tyreek and they've got Clyde, whereas in Las Vegas, their running backs, I mean, I don't know, Josh Jacobs.
He's injured. Can't really rely on him.
Between Ruggs and Edwards, and then Renfro, I'm not a huge fan of their receiving core. So, yeah, Waller's the dude there. I wouldn't be surprised.
Definitely number one.
Yeah. He could have the volume to surpass Kelsey this year. And he had 19 targets last game.
That's crazy. I forgot RO had Kelsey. That was a huge heavyweight tight end matchup, Kelsey versus Waller. Both did really well. I think they're going to be 1-2 at the end of the season.
Kittle might have something to say about that, but we'll certainly they're the two favorites to finish 1 and 2.
I'm not high on Julio, but this was only 1 week. We'll see if maybe Tannehill can get it together. I didn't watch the game, but I guess he was under constant pressure from Arizona's surprisingly good rush and defense. I was very surprised by that. I thought it would be a close game or Tennessee would win, but Arizona kicked the crap out of them, and you could see Julio felt the effects of that. It stinks.
Yeah, Chandler Jones is a stud. He was a stud before this game, so he kind of took Taylor Lewan to school. But yeah, I mean, I think that offense will be better, and I like, again, I really like Mays' team. I think Russ is, I think he'll be top 3 MVP this season. I like the Tennessee receiver stack because I think Henry is. I'm just not high on Henry this year. Plus McCaffrey. I mean, look at it. He had almost 200 yards total. Like, this is going to be, and it felt like this wasn't a good game for him. So I can just see, Edmonds is the only weak link here. I know Judy's hurt now, but he had, he's got Cooks. I mean, and he's even got Jalen Hurts as a, trade piece or, insurance in case Wilson goes down. So, I don't know. Mays has got, I still think he's one of the top 2 or 3 teams, and RO is definitely up there. He's a top 5 team, I think. If Brady keeps throwing
Brady and Godwin, that's a lot like your Mahomes, Hill double up on points all season. I think he'll kind of live and die by them. I don't really like Lindsey. I guess Hines got more of the workload than just Taylor. I know I was kind of surprised by that. I mean, that helps my team, but we'll see if they keep doing that all season.
Yeah. I'm not
Gronk on his bench. That's crazy.
I don't know. Well, he's got a good Boyd will do better than 3 most weeks, and this spot here is going to be a rotating door. Although he did pick up Mitchell, so we'll see. All right, let's go to the next one. Next we had another close matchup between Shmi and CB. Shmi was able to come out on top. This matchup really came down to the battle between Woods and Cup on Sunday night. And I mean, at one point, I think CB was up a couple of points, and then Cup scored a touchdown and went up, and then Woods scored a touchdown, and then Cup went over 100 yards, and going over 100 yards ended up being the difference for, the 3-point difference. Looking at these teams, I'm really not surprised at the final totals. I mean, maybe Josh Allen underperformed a little bit.
Yeah.
And Zeke definitely did, but I also don't think Shepard's going to put up 20 points every week.
I don't know. He's a stud, man. That's all Daniel Jones is really looking for. I mean, I know we have an extra data point because they played last night, but he's looking great. That's a hell of a pickup.
Yeah, well, I think CB is another team that I really liked going into the year. I think Allen's, Hopkins, Zeke, and Pitts is a really, and Woods is just a really solid, kind of top 4 or 5, and but
Jones is definitely the weak link. I mean, who knows what they're going to do every week if he could get another running back.
Yeah, well, he's got.
Mike Williams, maybe. I mean, Connor got a ton of. I didn't know this, but I think Connor had like 16 touches and Edmonds only had 14. So maybe he.
Well, but Connor's was a lot of his was in garbage time. I don't think that's indicative of.
Yeah, that's true.
That's actually going to play out in a closer game. I think Edmonds is more 1A to 1B instead of being more even split. But
yeah, I feel like he could go over. He could go with Jones in a favorable matchup, or Connor would be very touchdown dependent. But he can maybe exploit. But yeah, like you said, his core is great.
Yeah, and I like Shmi's team too. I mean, I know I'm not a big fan of his quarterback situation between Tannehill and Mayfield, but he's got good receivers. I like his running backs. I like Higgins as a flex. So this is a solid team minus, I think, minus the quarterback. And so maybe he'll trade me for Matt Stafford, and then we'll.
I don't like Tannehill. His receivers are those guys that don't look like great names, but they're amazing receivers. McLaurin, we had an extra data point because he balled out last night. Kupp is just a scrappy gym rat, white guy that is an awesome receiver too. Everyone likes Harris. I don't really like Harris as a running back, but if I know you and RO are high on him, so hopefully he does better than 4 points, but we'll see.
Yep.
That was a good matchup. That's crazy. 3 points.
No. All right. So next, we had another close matchup. We had a lot of close matchups last week.
We had 4 in a row right there that were all within 6 points.
A one-score game, so they say.
That's what makes the league exciting. That's what keeps you in it.
I know. So here, I do think this was a little bit of overachieving by Scales' team. I think that 120-ish points is going to be the exception rather than the norm for him, just because I'm not a believer in Captain Kirk. But he also does have Trey Lance on his bench, and I think his plan is for Trey Lance to take over the starting position at some point, and he thinks he'll have a Jalen Hurts type impact once he does. On the other hand, over here with Bryson's team, between Kyler, he's got great running backs in Jones and Mixon, Kittle. Plus, I think Sutton had a bad game, but it's going to see better days. And I like Bryson's team a lot. So he just had starting the Green Bay defense against New Orleans really hurt him. And then,
that's awful. I didn't even see that.
Yeah,
that was so bad. James threw 5 touchdown passes on 20 throws. That's insane.
Yeah, and Jones only having. And Jameis didn't even have 200 yards passing. It's the first time I saw the stat. First time in NFL history someone has thrown that few yards, that many touchdowns. It was basically the most efficient performance ever.
I don't think I think Winston is a little underrated in fantasy. I don't think he keeps that ratio up, but I definitely think he can help you in fantasy in some shootouts.
Yeah, well, Sean Payton might be the quarterback whisperer. Maybe not. Maybe it's not Sean McVay. Maybe we got the wrong Sean.
How crazy is this matchup, CT? Scales had to have been going nuts that Cousins was throwing these touchdowns, but it was right to Bryson's receiver. Because I think Thielen got 2.
He did, and he only threw 2. But again, the quarterback yardage bonus helps Scales here, and so Kyler had a big game, and so again, I really like Bryson's team going forward. I think he's got top 5 squad, and Scales. I think between him, Monty putting up 21 and Henderson putting up 14.
Did you watch that game? Monty looked good. He did look really strong. What stinks is it looks like he may split some time with Williams, but
yeah, that's where I was going to go. I think Williams is going to take more work than people realize.
But those are 2 in a running back league to have Kamara and Montgomery. That's great, and then Jones and Mixon. That looks great too. Hopefully Jones picks it up, but I think you're set up if you've got 2 RBs in this league, and it looks like these guys maybe even have 3. I think Henderson's a good flex, and Hunt is definitely a good flex.
Yep.
Especially next week's matchup.
Yep. Oh, yeah. All right, so let's go on to the next one. We got one more close matchup here. Was
I don't even want to go over this.
All right, we'll make it quick then, Jerry. So you had 1 point from Rodgers, and you had 5 from Ridley. Both of your high picks. Derrick Henry only had 6. Mostert got hurt.
2 carries I got out of him for the year. That's great.
Just a rough game overall, and you still were close. So I think you've got, even dropping Mostert, you've got Rodgers, Ridley, Lamb, Henry. Higbee, Lockett. You've got 3 great receivers. You've still got a good squad, Jerry. I like the
Yeah,
squad.
I
You
love
got this.
would have liked to pull out the win, but Lamar did just enough. I think he had like a 50-yard rush in the game that kind of sealed it because the game, I thought I was completely out of it, but just the way the game went of Las Vegas scoring a bunch to, diminish his Baltimore points and then Lamar having fumbles, it kept me in it, but he had like a 50-yard run that gave him 5 points that kind of sealed it. Aaron
Yeah.
Rodgers, there's nothing you can say how freaking pitiful of a performance that was. I mean, and then to only lose by 2, I wish West just would have kicked my ass. It would have made me feel better, but it was so close.
No, I feel like West didn't have any of the studs really have blowout games. He just had everyone have a decent game. And I mean, this feels like a floor type game for West's team. I'm high on West's team. I think he's got another kind of top squad. It all comes down though to how does Lamar do, and so we'll see. I think there's brighter days ahead for your squad,
I
Jerry.
hope so.
All
I
right,
hope
that was
so.
quick. That was quick. Let's go to the last matchup for last week, and then we'll quickly run through this week's matchups. So last, Nels got beat pretty bad by Taylor. These are both teams I wasn't high on, and so I'm not surprised that I mean, even with 38 points from Dak, and again, I think Taylor between Prescott, Diggs, and Chubb, he's got 3 good players, but then the rest of it's going to be piecing together stuff every week. And then over here, Fitz is already gone. I know he picked up Jameis, but Adams and Evans are good. Clyde is good, but the rest of the squad, and Keenan Allen is good. So he's got good receivers, but I just don't. I don't know, man. I'm not a big fan.
I'm surprised in the quarterback heavy league, Nels made so much risk. I mean, I think he got away with it 1 year, but man, to go with Fitzpatrick and then for him to get hurt, that's tough. But we'll see if he can get someone on the waiver wire. I mean, I picked up Derek Carr, who I think is pretty underrated. I think who does he have now? Jameis?
Yeah, he's got Jameis now. It's one of those deals where it's like, it was successful last year, and so he won the league. That's as successful as you can get, right? And he was streaming quarterbacks most of the year, and so the question is can he duplicate that success? And Jameis is as boom or bust as they come. So we'll see what happens, but I would not be surprised to see some more, around, I'll say the 80s point total
for these two. Yeah.
If Adams starts, doing last dance type performances and Evans, is able to, he has some of his blow up games, which we know he'll have at some point. I won't be surprised to see Nels have some bigger point totals, but I think for the most part, his floor is much lower than a lot of other teams.
He's got the 3 best receivers, I think, on paper. I mean, he probably had to have gone 1, 2, 3 with those guys, right?
He got
Hilaire. Who dropped out of all of them? Evans?
Yes, because he took Adams in the first. Well, you guys had your trade.
Right.
He took Adams in the first, and then I think either Evans or Allen dropped. But yeah. All right, well, that's all the matchups for last week. Jerry, let's go to next week's matchups. Yeah. But first, I think we might need to have a word from our sponsor.
Yeah, we do. I just had a thought live on air. Do we want to stop this recording and then have this will be the post matchup recording, and then we can start a new one for future if people want to just listen to one or the other?
Maybe that's a great idea, and I know we're already going on 30 or 40 minutes, and so maybe this week we let's go ahead and have a word from our sponsor, and then we can stop this one, and then do another recording for next week's matchups.
All right. So today's sponsor, here we go. After a long, hard day of losing in fantasy football, you can relax with a nice glass of the finest whiskey in all the land. Whiskey that is synonymous with consolation and aged in barrels for over 7 years. Why 7 years? Because that's how often you'll have a winning season. So if everyone celebrates your wins like the high school equipment manager just made a three-pointer, then you need to drink the smooth whiskey of Athens, Tennessee, or as we like to call it, WOAT. WOAT whiskey. Suck it down because you suck.
That's great. That is great. So, well, we'll end on that note, the WOAT note.
Yeah, WOAT whiskey. Thank you for sponsoring this podcast. They're great tagline. Suck it down because you suck. I think I probably could have used some WOAT whiskey last week. So
Yeah.
it could have Nels. Nels definitely could have had maybe a half a liter of it.
We'll whoever has the lowest score of the week they'll be the WOAT note. So for our first sponsor of the year. So Nels, congratulations on being the WOAT note for week 1.
Shout out to Nels. WOAT note.
All right. Well, with that, Jerry, we will pick back up in a separate recording.
Yes, sir. All right.
Good to see you guys.